Please take your seats. The meeting is about to begin. Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon and welcome to the June 18th, 2024 meeting of the Land Use and Sustainability Committee. This is a special meeting that's been convened to discuss the First Street project. Mr. Attorney, let's do a roll call to establish quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Bott?
Here.
Commissioner Dominguez?
Present.
Commissioner Suarez? And Chairman Fernandez.
Present.
Thank
you. Read into the record the virtual participation announcement.
Sure. Today's meeting of the Land Use and Sustainability Committee will be conducted in a hybrid format with members of the committee physically present in the commission chambers and staff and members of the public appearing either in person or virtually via Zoom. To participate virtually in today's meeting, the public may dial 1-888-475-4499 and enter the webinar ID, which is 8505-9923-037#, or log into the Zoom app and enter the webinar ID, which again is 8505-9923-037. Anyone wishing to speak on an item must click the raise hand icon or dial *9 if they are participating by phone.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. There's one item on today's agenda. That item is to discuss and consider Phase 1 and 2 for the First Street project in the South of 5th neighborhood. Colleagues have distributed a memo describing what will be the order for today's meeting. I'm going to start first with public comments for members of the public wishing to speak. Following public comment, I'm going to open up the floor to a presentation from staff. Following that, we're going to just go down a number of things generally on the First Street project: the location of the pipe and pump station, the relocation of trees, travel lanes during construction, and parking. That is the order for today's meeting. With that, I'd like to open up the floor for any members of the public wishing to speak on this item that we have on today's agenda. If you're attending virtually, you can raise your hand via Zoom. And if you're present, please come to the podium. You'll be allotted 2 minutes to speak. 2 minutes. Mayor Bauer, welcome.
Thank you. I'm here on behalf of the Housing Authority, the Miami Beach Housing Authority. I just happen to be chairman now, but the chairman rotates, so it doesn't mean anything. I hear that we're going to lose parking. I was told that it's the paid parking. And there's a lot of parking that has been gone and taken away for different things, and that's fine. But the Housing Authority struggles. We have, I think, 300 or 400 apartments with elderly that they all, or mostly all of them, have health care issues. And they need people to come, either therapy for muscles or to give injections or check out the heart, whatever it is. We have a volume of people that come in, stay an hour or around that, they leave, and all day long, every day. We fear and we struggle with the parking right now. We are negotiating with the marina to get 15 parking so that we can move some of our workers over there and have spaces for the healthcare people. And that is with the actual parking number that we have now. We struggle with the parking. When you go and visit there, and it's the visitors have a hard time, and we fear. I don't know how many parking we're going to be losing, but we can't lose parking. So I urge you to find a solution for this issue. The elderly needs the health care. The elderly need the parking. Can I finish?
Yes, you may.
And we need you to show your caring and to try to do something for them. I hear that nothing else can be done but take away parking. I don't understand why. I mean, you could push the thing a little bit further down. I don't know why you can do that, but whatever it is, we need the parking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With that, I see Vanessa Villamizar has her hand raised via Zoom. Welcome, Vanessa. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you so much. I live on the corner of Second and Meridian, and I use the parking on Second every single day. I know all of my neighbors, colleagues, we all rely on these spots for visitors, for our contractors. I believe we have 39 spots now. And in option 2, we'll go to only 15 spots on First, and that would be a tremendous loss. I'd like to see everyone consider option 1. We won't lose the same number of spaces. And I think it's really important for the community. I certainly don't want what happened on West Avenue to happen in my neighborhood. It would affect not only my quality of life, but of all of my neighbors. And it'll lower my property values and of everyone in the neighborhood. Less parking would be detrimental, and I'm asking for everyone to really consider option 1 of this proposal so that we can continue, living here comfortably and enjoying this beautiful city that we live in. Thank you so much for the consideration.
Thank you, Vanessa. Any other members of the public attending in the chambers wishing to speak? Please. At this podium. Over this way, please. And anyone else who wishes to speak, if you could approach the podium so that we know you're queued in line. Thank you.
Good
Welcome.
afternoon. Robert Selsum. I live at 90 Alton Road on the corner of First Street. I just want to say that this project has been around a long time. It seems to me that it is now very well thought out and obviously needs to be done. We can't have continual flooding every time it rains on First Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I see Casey Wood has their hand up raised on Zoom. Casey, welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Casey Wood. I'm the president of the Courts at South Beach Condominium Association. The board of directors has unanimously supported the option that provides more green space on First Street. Following that unanimous sentiment by the 5-person board of directors, we put out an e-survey to all of our 190 unit owners as well as to the renters that are residing here. And the results of that came back overwhelmingly in favor of the design with more green space. 81% of residents selected that option. 15% of residents preferred the option with less green space and more residential parking. And 4% of the 86 respondents were agnostic to either option. And so I think the Courts at South Beach is a strong advocate of, number 1, moving this project along quickly, and number 2, being a supporter of the street design that offers more green space. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your participation. Matthew, welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Matthew Goltanoff for the record, and my address is 125 Jefferson Avenue. I live on First Street and have been involved in this project for many years, well before COVID. And I know that it's been previously approved, and here we are now, of course, in 2024. We've seen all of the rainstorms this past week, back in 2023, and years past as well. So it's really great to see that it's in committee, that it looks like it's going to move forward. I want to touch on some of the topics that have been mentioned. Parking is one of them, and green space and other things. A lot of us, touched on this at the commission meeting last month. So without having to rehash it, though, a lot of evidence was provided saying that many hours of the day, the street is relatively empty. By that I mean the parking spaces are not being utilized. So the project, which we just heard from the president of the Courts condominium of 200 units, it's well supported by the residents that live there. They want to see a world-class design. They want to see a resilient design, one that will help move the city forward and make sure that we don't see a repeat of what we saw last week. So I'm very supportive of the project, and I also want to mention that I spoke with the Public Works Director, because there are maybe some loose ends on the kind of the traffic calming and the traffic safety features, and he's committed that, once we get past this, that he's going to work with us and make sure that we add in, speed humps or whatever else is necessary to make sure this is a neighborhood-friendly street, one which our kids can walk around on and bike and be safe. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank the administration for endorsing the approved design and pulling back from that idea of angled parking, which they also, mentioned that is not the safer design. So that all being said, I hope this is a successful meeting today and that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Any other members of the public wishing to speak, please line up here. I see we have Russell Galvin with his hand raised. Welcome, Russell. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Some reason I'm not being seen, and I'm not sure why, but it's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I'm very pleased to report that the city has worked with the commercial property owners and the southern property owners that amount to half of the property here on First Street. And we have come to an agreement to protect the restaurants and not lose the restaurants, as well as to protect these trees that took so long to grow and so long to make our streets so magical. So I can tell you that no one on the street really wants to go through the amount of effort and work that this is going to take. And it's a huge sacrifice for everybody who lives on the street. But we do agree that it's something that the community needs. And because it's in the best interest of the community, we have agreed to it. But we most humbly request that what has been agreed to on the part of the city be honored, and that it not be a hoodwink job, or that we lose the restaurants that are on First Street or the trees that are on First Street that make the streets so magical. So I'd like to thank everybody for their efforts, especially the administration and the staff who were so quickly to respond. It did take a little bit of time, but we did get there. And we got there because the commission insisted on understanding what the issues were and understanding what plan would be put in place to protect the restaurants from going out of business. So thank you all very much for your kindness and for your efforts on behalf of the community.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you for your participation. Representative Grieco, welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. I'll be brief.
Oh, your mic is off.
How do I turn it on?
Oh, wait. Well, I guess we have another one over here. Yes.
Okay, here we go. 1 for 2. So, good afternoon, everybody. Michael Grieco. I'm also a resident of the courts, and it was good that our courts president kind of broke down the position of our building. As he stated, over 81% of the residents in the courts support the project as designed, and they want to see it move forward, reminding you that 65% of the neighborhood, when polled 4 years ago, also want to see it move forward as designed. And I want to congratulate you. I think this is the 43rd public meeting about this project over the last 8 years. So we are at a point where I think we see a light at the end of the tunnel. I think last week's storm and some of the videos and photographs that I sent to most of you, really, the timing could not have been better or worse, I guess. But it needs to be fresh in our minds that flooding in our city and the size of storms that are going to continue to come, it is an existential crisis. And it is something that we cannot ignore. And surgery is going to be tough. Russell talked about it. It's going to be disruptive, but we're going to work through it as quickly as possible and as professionally as possible. And you have my commitment to help as much as I can, more than I already have on the financial end with the state. But I'm happy to hear that it looks like we're moving forward. On the parking issue, I'm glad to see Maddie here today, and I work now with the marina again, so I'm going to be working with Maddie on making sure that that Rebecca Towers is made whole with parking, so there's no issues with that. But I look forward to seeing the presentation and that this moves forward positively. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bauer.
Yeah.
Thank you. With that, I see Chris has their hand raised on Zoom. Chris, welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Chris Purrier, and I also live at the courts. And I just wanted to call and give my support, A, to the project, and B, to more green space and less parking. As Casey outlined, the courts sort of overwhelmingly have put their wishes forward. And then there was the community survey a couple years ago. The community overwhelmingly favors more green space over more asphalt. I also want to thank Russell for calling in. The trees are really, really important. And please, I'm asking the city to also honor your commitment to ensure that we don't get a bunch of 7-foot trees put in that are, not going to provide any meaningful shade. So thank you very much. I hope the project moves forward, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any other members of the public attending in person wishing to speak on this item? Any other members of the public attending in person wishing to speak on this item? If not, I'm going to go to Paula Allen on Zoom. Paula, welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Hey, hi. Yes, I wanted to say first that I also support the project going forward. It's needed for the flood mitigation purposes. I disagree 100% on losing any parking. Parking is needed. And as far as the courts, the number that our president gave and the percentages, that would basically work out to about 68, 69 residents of the 100 or units of the 190 that were in favor, since there was less than a 50% participation in the survey that was done. So I think someone said an overwhelming majority of the units. That's really not true. Of the people who actually answered the survey, which comes out to 68 people that were in favor of the more green space. Losing the parking would be very detrimental to the residents that use it. And by 9:30 this morning, all the parking was full. And if that's all taken away, or a large portion of it is, there's going to be a bunch of chaos trying to find parking, circling around, etc. And basically people will lose the ability to park and have any visitors or service people park to service their units. The people who are saying that they're for it, they'll also be losing that. And they all use it also for their service contractors, deliveries, etc. So not sure how they're going to feel when they can't have those deliveries and service people showing up. I've experienced it years ago also, when a air conditioning contractor showed up and he couldn't find parking, had to reschedule. So don't see that this is going to improve anything by taking away parking.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you for your participation. I'm going to go next with Cindy Esquivel, and our last speaker will be Julie after Cindy. With that, Cindy, welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioner Fernandez. Thank you for this meeting. And similar to Paula, I am in support of this project, but I do want you to understand, Alex, that both surveys, as I've discussed with other commissioners, they did not give a true telling of the people. We have almost 70 spaces just in our building that only have 1 parking space out of 187 units. So there just wasn't time in the 1 week that survey was out, to get an accurate snapshot, if you're looking at that, of right now, almost in the middle of the summer when nobody's here, of what's going on. It was also sent Commissioner Fernandez via email, and there wasn't really time for people to do that survey. So I hope that you will discard that and really look at all of that you have done yourselves, the entire commission, and see independently of yourselves that the street is full. I kindly ask that you look at 2 options, and one is to consider what the city approved for 3 years, which was the original option 1, that will keep the trees that need to stay, and replanting, we discussed that, but it will allow a parallel parking, because we saw in the last commission meeting that people were concerned with the safety of angle. Staying parallel will keep it similar to Meridian and to West, and it will provide more parking. We won't have the loss in parking. And it will also allow, helping on the commercial side, if needed, to tweak the design to allow a travel lane. Right, what you see outside right now is very similar to that design, which helps both sides of the street, so to speak. And lastly, if it can be considered, and again, I spoke to you about it, Alex, is if Commerce Street going down the alley may be an option with the pump. It may or may not. But if we have to move forward, I ask that you please tweak option one and give all the other asks that the businesses asked for. And I think we're set to go and move forward. And I thank everyone for their time and all the hard work on this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy. Julie, you have your hand raised on Zoom. Welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, Julie Rosselli. I live at the courts as well. I just wanted to piggyback on what Paula and Cindy were saying. We definitely want to move along with the mitigation of the flood. And we were just hoping that you can just give the option to option one. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's 2 more people to have their hand raised. Ed, your hand is raised. Welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak. Ed, you are muted. You need to unmute yourself. If not, we're going to move forward to our last speaker, Stefan. Stefan, welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Yes, hello. My name's Stephen Morse. I also live at the courts. I just want to reiterate what Casey Wood and Michael Greco said. There's been a vote. It was a very good number of people, as Casey outlined, at the courts who were in favor of the more green space. So just want to double down on what both of them are saying. So thank you very much for hearing me out.
Thank you, Stefan. With that, I'm going to close the public opportunity to be heard. Thank you to all the members of the public who have spoken, to Mayor Bauer, Representative Grieco for attending and your input. Certainly, everyone's opinion is very important in this project and is how we've gone to this point today. With that, I'd like to proceed with a staff presentation from our Public Works Director, Joe Gomez. Welcome, Joe.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. Joe Gomez, Public Works Director. So I think it's important, given the events that happened last week, to look at some of the photographs, historical photographs of the conditions that we have on First Street. So so with that, PJ, if you could. This is 2017, 7 years ago. You can see the extent of the flooding on that one, 2017. This is 2020. This is a compilation of 2022 and 2023 photographs, including the Cyclone 1, June 4th of 2022, which was the rain bomb we experienced. These photographs are from last week. And now I'm going to play the video. Now, if you would, if you can load up the presentation, please. Thank you. So with that, committee members, I'm going to go through a brief presentation. Talk about the timeline, the optimized design, and the MOT associated with the project, the 96-inch trunk line alternatives that we've looked at the request of the community, and also to make sure that the optimum location was selected. Other community concerns, green space, trees, the pruning, we'll talk about that, and then our conclusions and next steps. So here we are. As you can see, the process started way back in 2016. 8 years later, we're here. And again, just to reiterate, what we saw last week is a foretelling of more of these events to come. Just for the benefit of everyone, since 2017, we've had over 70 meetings on this project Nearly 40 of them are one-to-one meetings with stakeholders, 32 more stakeholder meetings from January 2021 to the present, 9 public meetings, regular software presentations. We have a dedicated public outreach liaison for the project, which is Lauren Fertel. She's here today. And we also have a consultant, a public specialist for the project. And ongoing project team meetings explain the project details to the public whenever they call us to ask us questions. So our public involvement process has been exhaustive. So in 2021, just as a reminder, the commission approved the First Street project. So just as a refresher, this project is to be able to provide drainage for the entire south of Fifth neighborhood. Is a neighborhood improvement project. The reason we're segmenting it is at the request of the community, and also to be able to manage the construction better and to minimize the impact to the public. But it's important to note that this project and all its components are for the entire south of Fifth neighborhood, including the pump station that's located south of First Street on Washington Avenue.
Where's the water going?
So the two strips you see are the one on the bottom represents the existing condition today on First Street, and the top is the optimized version with the landscaping, the wide green areas on both sides, the 2 lanes, 1 wide lane on the business side for valet purposes, as well as parking on the other side as well. And it also, as you can see, it's 2 lanes of traffic, 1 in each direction. In terms of construction phasing, and as a reminder again, as you know, we stopped the design at 60%. And the reason for that was there were questions about the construction costs. We engaged an independent consultant to do not only a verification of the construction cost estimate, but also to come up with a potential constructability and phasing plan. And as a result of that, we were able to segment the project into 4 phases, 4 distinct phases. Phases 1 and 2 have to be done together. Why? Because phase 1 is the pump station and the outfall. Pump station and the outfall does nothing without having the trunk line connected. So phase 2, which is the trunk line on First Street, that's critical to the project. And it also provides the enhancement and the beautification to First Street. Phases 3 and 4 are grayed out because those are not being considered at this time. But again, those are important because they're the ones that feed into the system, eventually will feed into the system and collect everything south of Fifth neighborhood. So total construction time for phases 1 and 2, we're talking about 24 months. And again, as a reminder, on April 19th, we went to the FERC committee, and the FERC gave it a favorable recommendation to move forward with phases 1 and 2, which is what we're presenting to you today. So in terms of construction, how we would phase the project. So the first phase, what we call phase 1A, would be the construction of the pump station. That pump station is again located just south of First Street on Washington Avenue. That is the linchpin of the entire project, so that has to be built first. So that would require the closure of the intersection of Washington Avenue to be able to construct the pump station. We would obviously have a comprehensive MOT to be able to route the traffic, to keep the traffic going. Once that's completed, then we would go to phase 1B. Phase 1B is constructing the outfall that connects the pump station through South Point Park and out into the bay. This is the only part of the project that is pressurized. This is a force main that will be connected to the pump station. As once the pump station receives all the water from the system, it'll then be pressurized and move through and out into the bay. And it'll go through a series of treatment boxes and an energy dissipator to slow down the water as it makes its way out. The injection wells, the wells are on Washington and Alton as part of phase 3 and 4 for water quality purposes. Then we would start construction on First Street. So on First Street, what we've been able to accomplish, and obviously after meeting with the community and the concerns of the community, is to shift the 96-inch pipe closer to the residential area so that we're able to keep a work zone of 60 feet. We need that work zone of 60 feet. Why? Because the pipe itself is an 8-foot diameter pipe. With that, then the trench is a 16-foot trench box that's required. But it's not only that, it's the machine that's required to be able to dig as it excavates and then loads onto the trucks, and then eventually the pipes are brought in. These are massive 8-foot diameter pipes, concrete pipes that have to be brought in and then by a crane and put in place. So on the other side, on the business side, we would have eastbound, we would have two lanes, two travel lanes. One is a 11-foot parking valet lane that's available, and then the other one would be the through lane. So during construction of First Street proper, we would only have traffic in the eastbound direction. That would be phase 2A. So we were asked to look at why not Second Street, why not Commerce Street, why not other options. So we did a detailed analysis. So in this diagram, as you can see, on top is the same section I just showed you in the previous slide, which is the First Street proper. Below it is you see with the blue line, that shows you the typical section for Second Street. Second Street is a 50-foot right-of-way. Essentially, we would be occupying the entire street in order to be able to put that 96-inch pipe. Another point that makes it not available is that there's a major FPL duct bank right through there. As you can see, that yellow box that is encroaching on the circular pipe that would have to be relocated. That's a huge, huge undertaking, which would be disruptive to the community. We then were asked, why not Commerce Street? Commerce Street has one of the most important pieces of infrastructure in the city. It's a 60-inch force main that comes down and connects to our 54-inch force main. This 54-inch force main is the force main that eventually takes all the sanitary sewer flows from the entire city and from our 3 sister cities to the north and feeds it under government cut to the central wastewater treatment plant at Virginia Key. In order to be able to fit a 96-inch pipe, we would have to do a massive relocation of this sanitary sewer force main. That's also a huge disruption to the community, not to mention at a huge cost. I should also remind you that the 54-inch force main, that's a relatively new infrastructure that was placed in probably within the last 10 years. I think it was in 2014 when it was constructed. It would also require relocation of the pump station further on Washington Avenue, which would be essentially lay in front of the restaurants on Washington Avenue, which would be extremely disruptive. We were also asked to look at smaller pipes, smaller diameter pipes. When you put smaller pipes that are required to hold that kind of volume, eventually the trench becomes much bigger. You're occupying a much bigger area. It's just impractical. Plus the hydraulics of that are significant. Horizontal directional drill. Horizontal directional drill is great when you have a pressurized system because it's pressurized, so you can, in order to put a tunnel, if you will, which is what a horizontal directional drill is, you have to go in a parabolic shape. A gravity system, which is all of the system for First Street, with the exception of the force main that goes out to South Point Park and out into the bay, all of that is gravity. So what happens when you put a gravity system in a parabolic shape, it becomes like a siphon. So you would have to have an incredible number of feet of head to be able to push that water through. It's just not, you can't use it for gravity systems. We were then asked to look at the alleyway. The alleyway is less than 20 feet. You can't fit this massive construction into it. And also, we were asked to look at Joe Stonecrab parking lot. And I've approached Joe Stonecrab, and the ownership has said that they're not interested in us occupying their private property. In conclusion, the only suitable location, and this has been exhaustively looked at, the only suitable location is where we propose it on First Street. In terms of the relocation of the trees, one of the major concerns that was addressed was the issue of oak trees. The beautiful oak trees, we all agree they're beautiful. We've made a commitment that in order to preserve the character of First Street, we're going to go ahead and root prune these trees. They would probably be root pruned 3 to 4 months in advance, slightly trim them, have them relocated. We were looking at spaces within, now we'll go on to the next slide. And slightly, we're looking at spaces. One of the potential areas is our green space facility to look at placing these trees so that we can maintain them during the construction and then bring them back. There may be some that do not survive, they go into shock. The commitment that we've made is that we will replace those oak trees with 10-inch caliper oak trees. A 10-inch caliper oak tree is a pretty sizable tree. So, and a lot of the calipers of the trees are less than 10 inches on First Street. So we've made a commitment that we're going to end up with 118 trees along First Street. We're also going to plant them in the green areas, in the typical, on both sides, in a kind of a triangular pattern so that you start developing that canopy. And then we work very closely with our landscape architect in-house, who's our Assistant Director of Public Works, Rodney Knowles, as well as with the consultant. In terms of the parking, the proposal, the 60% plans have the parallel parking on both sides. It has the wide valet lane on the business side, and on the residential side, it has the single parking lane. We had been asked to look at another concept to try to maximize the loss, or minimize the loss of parking. We did look at a diagonal parking configuration. We've presented that, we've shown it, although yes, the diagonal parking provides more parking spaces, you end up sacrificing green area. If you look at the typical section on the screen, and then in front of your screen, the red line that indicates on one side, you'll see that all that green area that would be available for planting a second row of trees would be taken up because the diagonal parking has to go in deeper because of the angle. Statistically, it also has been shown that although not unsafe, it is less safe diagonal parking than parallel parking. So that was another safety concern, and I think members of the community have expressed concern, especially with the number of bicyclists that we have in the area and all that. So in terms of parking, under the current configuration, we end up with active parking spaces 36, plus we would reconfigure Jefferson Avenue with 12 spaces, giving us a total of 48 spaces. Those parking spaces would all be available for residential parking, which is the residential zone 2, which is currently what you have out at First Street, and that would be made available to the residents. So in conclusion, Mr. Chair and honorable committee members, what we're asking for today is your favorable approval to move forward with this project with the typical section as designed as we have in the 60% plan, to move forward to get us to continue the stakeholder engagement, and we're totally committed to that. We intend to hold a 60% public meeting with the community once we restart up the design. And our hope and effort is to get the design done by 2020, designed and permitted by 2025, so we can go to construction in 2026. That concludes my presentation, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Colleagues, at this time, I'm going to bring the discussion up to the dais. I'd like the record to reflect also that we have Commissioner Joe Magazine joining us as well. Commissioner, thank you for joining us. And before we open up the floor to discussion, the most important thing today is for us to agree whether we want to move forward with the First Street project. After that, we can talk about pipe locations of pump station, trees, parking, travel lanes, everything else falls after that. But before we get into that discussion, all of that is mute unless we agree that this is an important project to move forward with. And so I just before we proceed with the agenda, do we all agree that the First Street project and these two phases are phases that we want to proceed with? Yeah. Okay. With that, I see by acclamation. Let the record reflect that by acclamation, this committee believes that we need to proceed with the First Street project. With that, let's open up the discussion to the location of the pipe and pump station. Is there discussion from the dais, questions from the dais? The administration is recommending the placement of this 96-inch pipe along First Street and shifting it as far north as possible, and maintaining the pump station at the proposed location at the parking lot of the corner of Washington Avenue and First Street. Is there discussion, questions, comments from the dais on the staff recommendation as to the location? Seeing none, is there, Commissioner Suarez, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I fully support the administration's attempt to mitigate any disruptions to business and moving it as north as needed.
So is that a motion to place the pipe along First Street as far north as possible to maintain the 2 lanes of traffic?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Suarez. Is there a second on the motion? It's seconded by Vice Chair Bond. Can we show the placement of the pipe adopted by acclamation?
Yeah.
By acclamation, we can show that adopted. Do we support the placement of the pump station? The placement of the pump station is critical to the placement of the line as well. You can't have the line, this 96-inch pipe, there unless you have the pump station located at this lot, because the pump station only receives the water through the northern connection. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Director.
That's correct, sir.
All right. So is there a motion from the committee? It's moved by the Vice Chair, seconded by Commissioner Suarez. By acclamation, we can show the location of the pump station adopted. With that, let's go into the discussion of the trees. We know that one of the points made by the body at an earlier date was the importance of preserving the character of First Street. And key to the character of First Street is the preservation as much as possible of the oak trees. And so the staff has made a recommendation to prune the trees 3 to 4 months.
Prior to the construction.
Prior to the construction, being relocated to a suitable site. And once construction is complete, the trees will be brought back and replanted along First Street in a triangular configuration. And with that, any tree that does not survive, the commitment is to replace them with a tree that is at least 10 inches of diameter and is an oak tree.
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Is there?
I'll move that.
That's moved by Commissioner Suarez.
I'll second.
That's seconded by the Vice Chair. Any questions, discussions on the motion before the table? By acclamation, we can show the item pertaining to the relocation and replacement of the trees adopted. As it relates to the travel lanes, we've heard from the community the importance to maintain 2 eastbound travel lanes during the duration of the construction period, which could extend up to 24 months. Is there any comments, discussions from the dais as to the recommendation on the travel lanes? Is there a motion on the table to support the recommendation of staff on the travel lanes? It's been moved by Commissioner Suarez.
I'll second.
Seconded by the Vice Chair. By acclamation, we can show that adopted. By acclamation. Thank you. With that, let's enter the discussion on parking. After our last meeting, we asked the city administration to engage with all the stakeholders in the area. A number of meetings have been had by the city administration, by a number of us. I think all of us have had our own individual meetings and conversations with stakeholders. There's been an option that's been brought forward to maintain parallel parking on the north side of First Street. Is there any questions, comments on the recommendation from the administration as it relates to the parking on First Street and in the project?
So, parking.
Commissioner Body, recognized.
Thank you, sorry. Parking is clearly an important aspect of this. I was not opposed to the angled parking, but enough people are, and so I deferred to the residents. However, we have opportunity in the marina. We have a public parking lot that Smith and Walensky uses. We might be able to work with some of the private businesses or buildings to chip away 5 spots here, 10 spots there. And I think that's how we're going to need to solve the issue, because we cannot delay this project or try to reimagine it yet one more time in the absence of looking for the most perfect solution. It doesn't exist, so we have to go with the best solution before us and try to find the little pockets of opportunity in the neighborhood to address the parking that used to be all in one place. So I'll make that motion.
And is that a motion for us to identify parking spaces for residential use within the marina, the Smith and Walensky parking lot, and any other lots that the city has within the area?
Well, and any other buildings and businesses that might be able to make spots available during the day.
Okay, all right, so there's a motion on that on the table. I'll second the motion so that we can discuss, and hopefully as we engage in this discussion, we can amend the motion to perhaps, if it's friendly enough, incorporate other comments that the body may have as it relates to parking. With that, Commissioner Suarez, you're recognized.
Joe, you said that angled parking is less safe. How much less safe would you say?
Statistically, based on all the research I've done, it varies depending on what you read, but it somewhere ranges between 30 and 40%.
30 to 40% less safe than parallel parking?
Yes, sir. Statistically.
Okay, so, colleagues, I think 30 to 40% is a huge risk to be less safe in a residential neighborhood, especially where, children play. My son Zev plays there, Capri, plays there with Zev, Dana and Brooke, Matt's daughters. And, when we're going to be incentivizing more pedestrian and micromobility everywhere across Miami Beach, it just doesn't make sense to have a parking solution that is 30 to 40% less safe than parallel parking. I think, that's a big red flag for me. I also made a presentation, I think a couple of meetings ago, that there's going to be no net loss to residential parking. We're going to be able to keep the 38 residential parking spaces. I go to South of Fifth multiple times a day, and in the morning and in the evening, it's empty. It's very much underutilized, and the safety concern I have is that at the end of the day, since there's so much more asphalt, you're going to have a lot of people speeding down there. You're going to have a lot of people making illegal passing on cars that are slow. Perhaps the Uber drivers are slow, and then people just drive around them, potential to hit children. And so I think that it has been very vocal with the community, with the survey. I understand that it was maybe about like half the people answered the survey, but when you have an 80% return or favorable on 50% of the sample size, I mean, that's pretty significant. That's not going to change much. And so I'm going to be fully supportive of the parallel parking with much more green space, because that's what the residents want.
Thank you, Commissioner Suarez. Vice Mayor Dominguez, you're recognized.
Thank you. And Joe, thank you for the presentation. I know that you and I have had many meetings over the last year, and come up with the angled parking because of residents being concerned about not having parking available. And a few things came up. So that is a business street. So there are businesses there. I've never seen a child playing on there. And Commerce Street is all angled parking. So it would be interesting, rather than getting off the cuff in the future, to get the actual percentage of how more dangerous angled is to parallel, because we have many streets that are angled and they work fine and they help preserve some parking. I am in favor of my colleagues' items that were just the motion and the second that was just done now. But my question is, many residents called in and talked about option one, and that wasn't presented or discussed. And how different is that from what was presented today.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, through the chair. It is substantially different, and I can describe it. Chrissy, if you don't mind, can you bring me up the computer? I can describe to you the basic differences. The reason it wasn't discussed, Vice Mayor, is because option one was not approved by the commission, and the 60%, the design and the mission we were given was to design the plans based on a community approved, which then the commission endorsed 60%. So let me just give you
A community approved.
the option two, which is the current design as, and that was approved by the commission in 2021. So option one, which is the one that was described by the callers, has an 8-foot median. It would provide for parking on the inside and outside lane on one side of the street. It would only have parking lane on the other side of the street. However, the green areas, both on each side, are only 5 feet wide. So you're going from I believe it's 17 and 3/4 to 5 feet. The green areas are narrow. The median is 8 feet. You take away the curb, so you're talking about 6 feet of green area. In addition to that, the sidewalks are narrower on the option one than option two. They're 8-foot sidewalks as opposed to the 10-foot sidewalks. So there are some substantial differences.
Yes, and Commissioner Dominguez.
Thank you. And I'll just, as a point of reference, just to say it on the record, that this project has been going on for many years, and several times it's been mentioned that there's been community engagement, but I will say there's been something amiss with the engagement, and I'll tell you why. First, it was a lady that had taken over Sofna Morano Grande, and she had meetings, and she didn't really share it with the stakeholders, but that counted as community input, and she up and moved in the middle of the night. Then the second part is, we've had conflicting things, even from the courts. The courts wrote us a few weeks ago and said, yes, we're in favor, let's get it done, let's preserve parking. And then 24 hours later, as if they were pressed up to a wall, they were like, oh, we take it back. So there's been flaws in the community input, and there's been a lot of confusion to the public, and I think that's why we're getting so many questions.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Vice Mayors. Commissioner Magazine, you're present if you wish to chime in on this.
Sure, I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. Simplistically, as we're doing this project in response to resiliency, climate change, I would think from just a layman's perspective, having more green space is going to help, one, with the resiliency efforts, and then two, also help with essentially the cooling impacts that asphalt is going to have a dramatically higher temperature in that area. So the green space, I'm not just thinking about this in terms of aesthetics or design, but also what is the true goal and intent of this project, and that is in response to climate change. And having more green space in that area is a better way to essentially navigate the challenges that we face ahead. Would that be a correct assessment?
Absolutely. And one more important through the chair, that having a wider green area, because we're raising the road on average about a foot and a half, the harmonization, the transition it allows us to be able to harmonize to the existing elevation of the properties on the back of sidewalk. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you minimize and you tighten up as you harmonize, because you're essentially raising, everything is more abrupt. So that has an impact as well. So for sure, it's much better.
Thank you. And one of the comments I'd like to make on the record, because the parking is a concern. It's a concern that we've been hearing now historically for a while, and parking is of a great demand in our community. This is a very car dependent community. Even though we are evolving, we are an evolving city. We're going to be seeing more individuals using micromobility. We are building a city that is more walkable and pedestrian friendly. We're looking at increasing options for public transportation. However, there is a segment of our population that is dependent of caregivers, that is dependent of medical assistance. And so one of the things that I like to incorporate into Commissioner Mott's motion is a motion to the City Commission urging and directing the city administration to work with the Housing Authority to provide them 15 parking spaces at a discounted rate at the parking garage at Fifth and Alton. We have capacity there. We have parking spaces that are available there that can serve the needs of our elderly residents. So Commissioner Mott, if you would allow that as a friendly amendment to your motion, because it's clear the Housing Authority and its residents need parking. So I'd like to incorporate that into your motion if you allow.
I do.
Okay, great. And in addition to that, I would like to request specifically for amend your motion, and again, aligned with the spirit of your motion. You're asking the city to reach out to businesses. Joe's has 2 parking lots right there. And I think we need to engage in direct conversation with Joe's, because that is parking that we should be asking Joe's if the city could rent parking spaces there.
I've already started that conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, and I think we should incorporate that into your motion. So that's official on the record as part of your motion, that this body, not just you by yourself, but you're leading on this, and thank you for leading on this, Commissioner Bond, but that we support you in those conversations to see if we can get parking spaces from the Joe's parking lot dedicated as residential parking for the area.
I support including them in the conversation for sure.
Wonderful, thank you. So let's include that in the motion. Commissioner Suarez, you wanted to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to piggyback on that, I've also have an item going through the process to address employee parking. And hopefully, what I'm hoping to have is South Point Elementary parking garage after hours of school be open for valet parking for restaurant owners, so that they don't have to use residential or paid parking spaces when needed. Joe, if we were to go with the angled parking, how much of a delay would this cause?
We're looking at 9 to 12 months delay, because we would have to essentially scratch a lot of the design that we've done in order to be able to reconfigure the design the schematic that we laid out in terms of the angled parking.
Okay, all right, and so I'm going to make a motion to approve the administration's.
We just before we get to that motion, we have a motion on the table that's been seconded on the parking to proceed with the parking as placed on the agenda, that will ensure that we maintain at least the current amount of residential parking that is available on First Street to continue being available for residential use on First Street.
Absolutely.
And that together with the amendments made. And are the amendments clear for purposes of the record?
Yes.
Thank you. The item's been moved and seconded by acclamation. Can we show that adopted? By acclamation, that item is adopted. And Commissioner Suarez, I recognize you to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the administration's recommendation for moving with as designed.
Okay, to restart the design that was stopped at 60% and to finish the design and permitting by 2025, and I guess that includes to go to construction by 2026.
Correct.
Okay, so the motion's been made by Commissioner Suarez. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Abad. On the motion, Commissioner Suarez, Commissioner Dominguez, you're recognized.
I just have a question. Does that motion affect the parking motion we just approved by acclamation?
I believe not, because the design, it's consistent.
Right, and it will allow us time during this design phase to work with those other entities for additional parking.
Thank you. Any additional questions, discussions on the motion before us? Without any further questions, can we show that item adopted by acclamation? Yes, okay, great. By acclamation, we can show that item adopted. Any other matters for the good of the order before us? With that, staff, thank you for your support, colleagues. Everyone, thank you for your time dedicated in speaking with the stakeholders, businesses, and residents alike, and to all of the members of the public that have participated in this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues.